the basic stuff and all the cigarette. It's like, you're struggling. He said, he said, so he's going to be having the fridge trouble once a week. So if we have too tight where he's working every day, all day, like that. And I think we're volunteering. So I would like to.
Hey, Rick.
That. We'll see though. You know, we were kind of, we said to him, you know, Ryan, because one of the things he brought up at the Mitch appointment that gives him anxieties. Access to all his money. And so we had a talk with him after the appointment and said, Ryan, you know, you're only making about, you know, 120 and 150 bucks a week. That's all you're making. How much of that do you want to spend? Because, you know, you can go through it in a few days and then you'll have, you know.
One thing for the truck.
Well, yeah, plus. And won't have any money when you really need something, you know, like if a car breaks down or something, then you can't get it fixed, I don't have any money saved, so. And it's, yeah, so it's paid for the ticket. So, 146. So I said, you absolutely, if you want to have more money in your pocket, you absolutely need to find another part-time job. Because I'm not giving you your 150 a week and having you this and away every week. I know a young 18-year-old in the truck would easily fix it.
They pulled him over. They were questioning him about the blue blur.
Really? Is it yours related to the
Yes.
work?
That's why I referred to Sally. They said we've never been able to catch her.
Yeah, so it's somebody that he worked with.
Hey, Rick.
You're getting skinny.
He sure is.
Is this real? Eats like a pig. He eats like a horse. I don't know how.
Yeah, he eats fine. I don't know why he's looking so sweet. Well, I'm glad he did that right. Saturday and Sunday are supposed to be nice, honey, but hot.
Oh, that's okay. I like hot.
So I have to do that without me. I'll be in here with their air conditioning. You never see the water. It's flowers. Oh, yeah? Potatoes. Potatoes. Y'all may be able to eat some of these potatoes.
Once in a while at Walmart, right in the front, they have tomato section where there's two of them. They're about this big around, two in the back. And they're probably not supposed to go in there for either.
Hey, Francis.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good.
Good to see. I see several people I know there. Max, good to see you again.
Nice to see you too, Francis.
Rick?
And
Yeah.
Rick and Bob.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Rick.
Rick, you're looking thin.
Somebody thinks so.
Book, Rick.
My wife would think that would really be good. No, just kidding.
Oh, brandy and Coke?
No. Like Michigan Springs.
This just arrived today in the mail.
Oh, maybe because the borders to Canada are closed, it takes a little bit longer.
You don't have a show of hands, they'll have a show of book covers. How's that?
Yeah. Hey, Rick, yours is right side up. Mine's backwards.
Well,
Maxwell, you got the Canadian translation, right?
Yeah, the one that's upside down.
Okay.
it's not the cover, it's all the hard work and great material inside between those covers. No comments.
What did you write,
No,
Rick?
cheers. Cheers.
Rick, thank you for the book.
Rick wrote Marshall Edwards and Jerry Augustine.
You read pretty good.
Yeah, because it's backwards.
And you write even better.
Thank you. Who here has Coin Toss the Championship? Rick's book.
I have it.
Well, it's a book.
Yeah.
Who knows? We thought we'd have one this season, but it doesn't look too likely. Who knows if they'll even play?
Yeah, I think you're right.
The Journal Sentinel was gonna do an article in the book, and the guy emailed me that they're gonna see how things play out. No pun intended.
Hello, Dennis.
Hey, there's Dennis.
I like that background, Gregory. Boy, I feel like you're in Star Trek, like Captain Kirk.
Yeah, exactly.
23 people on already. Well, you guys got on early. When I came up, I had Smokey Joe Woods sitting there that I couldn't get in. The other
We got a
chapter.
real
Gotta get
interesting conversation about you.
Get rid of that 486 computer and get a Pentium.
Yeah. Wow. No, my Zoom said Smokey Joe Woods conference was going to 7:30, so that's what showed up for me. So, wow, I should have put in the ID. So how's everybody tonight?
Good. Hey, July 22nd, we're doing a Zoom thing on minor league baseball in a summer of COVID and contraction.
As improvisers.
Yeah.
I think that having people, some ambassadors.
Hey, good news, at least in terms of minor league baseball for the local state. Beloit Snappers are going to be sticking around. They've got a new stadium going up, opening probably about this time next year. So once MLB figures out all the affiliations, then obviously it's interesting that there won't be any 2 or 4 year deals, but there'll probably be 10-year deals. So good news for minor league baseball here in Wisconsin.
Is there word about where the Brewers will send their reserve players?
For next year, no idea. That's all to be negotiated by Major League Baseball. So, obviously they're in Appleton for their A-ball, but everything's up for grabs.
But for this year, where will they?
No, minor leagues are done. They're not going to play.
But there's a taxi squad.
Yeah, there was a
taxi squad.
I've not seen or heard anything yet.
They've talked about using the field at Concordia University in Mequon where the Chinooks play.
The Lutheran,
and possibly Appleton.
A Lutheran taxi squad. That's a very good taxi squad. Yes.
Well, they'll have good casseroles.
Yes, and coffee. Lots of coffee, Dennis.
Yeah. We got I'm at 25 people. Before we start the meeting, I'd like to just make a quick announcement about something Sabre's doing. I don't know, maybe hopefully you guys have seen emails on this, the Sabre virtual meetings that are coming up on weekends in July. It's in lieu of the Sabre convention. So if you have not been able to attend the Sabre convention, it is a way for you to do so. it won't be the same in some respects. Obviously, not getting together and having a beer afterwards, but you can.
Is that
Yeah, yeah. But the research presentations and everything else that will be out there. So, so watch for that. I saw an email from Jacob tonight that some of the sessions are filling up fast. They're over 50% filled. So if you're thinking of any of these, go out and take a look at that. You can see that out on sabre.org. Make sure we're recording this puppy because with the books, I think we are. Yeah, we are recording. Yep. So before we get started, although most of us, I don't know if you can see this poster behind me, I would bet my salary, and since I'm retired, I don't have much to lose this way, that nobody in the world has seen a pennant like this one. Even though it says 82 Milwaukee Brewers, let me see if I can zoom in on this. If you can read that.
World.
It says World Champion, 1982 World Champion Brewers.
I got one of them.
You do?
Yeah.
I don't know where my wife found it with her clothes. I have no idea where the hell that came from. I know they print these things up, you know, when the seasons end, but I don't know how she got one. And we're in the process of, our house went on the market today and selling our house. So we spent the last 3 weeks basically seeing if I could destroy my back and cleaning out a house. And she found that. So
I believe I bought it at the rally at County Stadium the day after they lost.
Really? Wow.
Sure.
Either that or Game 5.
Yeah. So I don't know, but it's nice. And the reason I'm starting with that is because we're going to talk about Harvey Keene, the 1982 Milwaukee Brewers. And I think we have a world championship book in that. I'm going to see about muting everybody. Just I'm going to mute all for now. Okay, just to play it safe there. Okay. So tonight we're going to talk about the book. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to look at it. I have to admit that I've opened it up. Thank you. I have not had a chance to even read the opening yet. Like I've said, I've spent the last 3 weeks cleaning house and vacuuming, and I've never been to the West Bend dump before this month, and I've been there I think 8 times. So to say the least, we had a lot of junk to get rid of. So our speakers tonight, our guest speakers, honored to have all of you here. Gregory Wolf, who is our editor. And I saw Gregory's on here. Gregory's been, I got from the bio project here, his bio here, was born in Pittsburgh. We won't hold that against you, Gregory. Now resides in Chicago. We will hold that against you. With his wife and daughter. He's a professor of German studies and holder of the Dennis and Jean Bauman Endowment Chair in Humanities at North Central College in Naperville, Illinois. He's edited a dozen books for Sabre. Thank you for doing that. He currently is working on projects on Shibe Park in Philadelphia and Ebbets Field in Brooklyn. Both sound very interesting. And since January 2017, he's been co-director of Sabre's bio project, which you can follow on Facebook and Twitter. Gregory, thank you for being here. You're up there. We also have Phil Boulder, who had 3 chapters in the book. Phil was born in Milwaukee and grew up within walking distance of Milwaukee County Stadium. As a kid, that would have been like heaven for me. He graduated from Ripon College and spent his career on university campuses as a fundraiser and now lives in Tempe, Arizona. I saw Phil at the Sabre Day event in Arizona when I escaped winter, which seems like forever ago. He became a Sabre member in 1979 and has become active in supporting the fundraising efforts of the organization, and very, very active in that. And then there's some guy named Rick Schabowski. I don't know, most of you probably have never heard of the guy, so I got to try. Let's see if I can find something on him. He's been a Sabre member since 1995. Happy 25th anniversary, Rick. Retired machinist from Harley-Davidson, is currently serving as an industrial mathematics teacher at Waukesha Community Technical College and at the Wisconsin Regional Training Center in the manufacturing program. He is a certified manufacturing skills standards council instructor. Is that all on your business card? That's a lot right there. It's a skills standard council instructor. He is president of the he was the third president of the Keltner Badger State chapter. Probably the longest serving, like we've been around for about 19 years, and you were probably doing that job for about 16, 17, Rick? I think you're muted, Rick. Let me unmute you. Rick? Hang on. Why aren't you unmuting? Rick, can you unmute yourself?
I said it's something like Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I guess they did a good job. There was no war on, but we kept going. But it wasn't just me. It's this entire Sabre group is all teamwork and people working together. And this book is a testimony to that.
Yep. He is treasurer of the Milwaukee Braves Historical Association, a member of the Hoop Historians and Pro Football Research Association. He's the author of the book about the Milwaukee Bucks championship season, all one of them, from coin toss to championship to 1971, the year of the Milwaukee Bucks. He lives in St. Francis. Phil, by the way, wrote his chapters in the book were on Kevin Bass, Charlie Moore, and the September 17th, 1982 game project on Mike Caldwell studying out the Yankees. Rick wrote his articles were on Jerry Augustine, Marshall Edwards, the 10-8-82 Sutton Gem, and he wrapped up the book with the parade. So welcome, gentlemen. Gregory, would you like to take over and talk about the project?
Sounds good. Maybe just a few words. I don't want to say a whole lot, but can I see maybe by hand, how many people have contributed to any Sabre books before? I would say most of you have. Well, you know, it's a labor of love. I've been working on probably 15 or 16 books now for Sabre, and it doesn't, it's a labor of love. We're all doing this because of our own passion for baseball. We're not getting paid for it. But nothing comes together unless all of us are working together at the same time. There's a lot of rewrites, a lot of editing, a lot of revision. But I want to thank all the authors who contributed to this project. I think this one might have had close to 45 or 50 different people who contributed to it. That's a lot of people to coordinate. That's a lot of emails back and forth. I just want to thank everyone who did that. I especially want to thank Bill down in the far left-hand corner. As my second reader, he's someone who I communicate with per email probably 2 or 3 times a day, even when we're not working on a project. Carl Reichers, second row, far right. He was the fact checker for this. And Levin, he's not here, but the 3 of us have worked on, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 books together. I see Russ down below me, 3 or 4 below, and he and I have worked on probably 3 books together as well. But a few more people that I think we really need to thank for this project. Even though this is a volunteer project, there are a lot of costs for this project, as you can imagine. And those costs, Sabre pays for. So I want to thank Sabre for that, Cecilia. I want to thank Robin Barnes at Milwaukee for the Brewers, who supplied all of our photos for this book at no charge. That's a big expense for Sabre. When we have to purchase photos for the cover or the individual photos that can easily run into thousands of dollars. And I want to thank one last person, and that's the designer of this book, David Ping. I worked with him the last 2 or 3 books. We got behind it a little bit in Sabre in terms of our book production because of a change in our longtime producer of the books, designer of the books. She had to leave because of her professional obligations, and so we've been using a series of designers. And the last few books that I did on Comiskey Park and Wrigley Field, David Ping worked with me on that, and it's a great opportunity to work with him. So I just wanted to say maybe a few words. All of you know the process of this. It's a time-consuming process. Generally, for me, for the books, once I announce a book and start looking for authors, I always say it takes probably 2 years to get the book published. this one took probably another year because we were behind in terms of our publication schedule. So that was a bit of an unintended delay to get this book out. I do recall when I was up at one of the Milwaukee chapters with you, Rick, and Bob and Dennis, we were discussing this book, and I announced it at the Milwaukee chapter, at the Keltner chapter, and we were at a bar near the Bucks place. What was the name of that bar, Rick?
The Major Goolsby's?
Yeah, that's right. We were there instead of meeting midway between Milwaukee and Chicago at the Broad Stop. If you're in Chicago, you know that was a great underage drinking place in the history of the Chicago area.
In Milwaukee area.
Well, I mean, for us, it was always, the Broad Stop was a Milwaukee or a Chicago area place. For you all, you thought it was Milwaukee. We always thought it was a Chicago place, north of us in Chicago. So I just want to thank everybody for this book, for contributing to this book.
Good. Phil, why did you want to be a participant in writing for this book?
Well, as you noted, I grew up within walking distance of County Stadium, which is my one and probably only claim to fame. But I was at some of these games. It was exciting and part of my experience with baseball. So I enjoy writing and researching, and it was just fun. So I really had to be in this book. Once I heard about a book project for 1982. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the only book Sabre's written about about a team that lost the World Series, but they deserve it. So I appreciated being part of it.
Well, there have been other Sabre books about teams that haven't necessarily won, or even sometimes bad teams. You know, there was a book on the inaugural Texas Rangers team that probably lost 106 games or somewhere around that. So there are other teams.
But if any team had personality, this is it. I mean, I'd match the 82 Brewers up against the 86 Mets, or the Oakland A's of the 70s, or the Yankees of the 90s, as in my lifetime. Baseball teams that really, really brought you in because of the personality of the players.
The cast of characters. And they were characters.
Yep.
Rick, how about you, Rick? Why did you get involved?
Well, being a lifelong Milwaukeean, and being a Braves fan and everything, even going to the White Sox games when they were playing in Milwaukee in that 4 or 5 year period. You just had to be a Brewer fan. I was there the first game ever. Skipped school in Milwaukee. Bobby didn't know about it, but we went to that first game. And baseball's in, by the way, my blood, a lot of your blood, all your blood. You're all interested, passionate fans, and became good writers and researchers. Sabre really enabled us to do this. And like I said, the character of the team, boy, the lunch pail people, the euchre, you had so many great stories. In a fantastic year. For me, it wasn't good economically. I was laid off. I got laid off on Friday the 13th, August 13th, 1982, but allowed me to go to more ball games. I managed to attend some of those games in the playoffs, games there. I went to the parade. I went to downtown for the parade they had at Wisconsin Avenue. I also went to, after that, they had a pep rally, a parade at County Stadium. And that was the famous time when Robert Young drove his motorcycle through the outside warning track and everything. I was there. I remember being interviewed. I think it was WOKY, and they said, "Well, the Brewers lost. What brought you here today?" And I said, "Well, based on the current economic conditions, I'm able to attend events like this." It's kind of, I don't know if they use it, but the whole city is caught, and having a parade that was so well attended for a team that lost. I mean, the Bucks didn't even have anything. It's a different sport in '71, but it was just a Brewer fever. And watching these games now, even with old replays, what a team we had. And so close to winning it all. Coming back against the Angels and winning those 3 straight. And boy, I was there that Friday game when Sutton pitched the game and wrote about it. It was really something. I'm glad I could be a part of it. And like you mentioned, Dennis, I can't wait. A large turnout, very many people, not even involved with Milwaukee, living nearby, and still interested in documenting that story.
I still get chills watching ALS Game 5. It just seeing Cooper motioning to get the ball down and that final ground ball to Yount to Cooper still gives me chills. It still chokes me up. It was a heck of.
I just like to say that the Milwaukee chapter is well represented by Sabre publications. In fact, it is probably better represented than any city in the U.S. I mean, you have a book on the 57 Milwaukee Braves. You have a book on County Stadium, and then a book on the 82 Brewers. Right off the bat, I cannot think of another city in baseball, another major league team or even a ballpark that has 3 Sabre books on it. So there's a lot of representation for Milwaukee baseball by Sabre.
Gregory, how much did you? Who made the decision to write the book on the 82 Brewers? Did you have some say on that?
Well, I remember Rick talked to me years ago. I mean, I'm always working, quite honestly, on around 5 or 6 books, period. Baseball as a professor. So I probably have 5 or 6 books in some process going on at any given time. And Rick talked to me. I go up, as a few of you know, I try to get up to Milwaukee pretty regularly and sometimes meet you on Blue Mound at J&A's. Go up there, and Rick had mentioned maybe tailgating with you all. Oh, what about editing a book on the 82 Brewers? And I said, oh, that's complete bullshit. I don't think we need a book on the 82 Brewers. But there were a lot of considerations, not just the Brewers themselves, but there are some things that Sabre needs to consider. So one is, I mean, the impetus about the book is not just to commemorate a team, but also to promote what Sabre is doing, not just Milwaukee. So one of the biggest questions that I had was, how many players on the roster and the coaching staff already had bios? If we had already in the bio project 25 bios published, there was no way that we wouldn't need a book on the 82 Brewers. But once I did some research and discovered that actually only a handful of players actually had bios for the bio project, that's the bio that I'm talking about. Once I realized that only a handful of players had bios, and most of the stars did not. I wrote about Sutton, Yount, and Simmons. Most of the stars did not have bios. Norman Thomas didn't have one. I was really amazed. I think Cecil Cooper might have been the only star who had one, and that was written a long time ago it might have been for a Boston book, if I recall. So that was the reason. So then I made a proposal to Sabre to get that, because there are costs that Sabre pays for this, and the anticipation is there's also photo costs as well as the labor costs and the cost for the designer. So that was the genesis of that book. And I think, obviously, knowing there were so many players who needed bios, that was a great opportunity to also promote and advocate for the bio project. So that's a little bit of the background. So it's not just the 82 Brewers per se.
Good. Gregory, what type of challenges did we present for you with writing this book?
Well, for anyone who has to read essays, I mean, I do this as a professor. I mean, I get your essays. Some essays are, I mean, maybe not for the Brewers book, but I'd have to take a look. But some essays are just poorly written, bad grammar, bad style, bad language, not documented correctly. It takes us a while. This is for anything. When I read the first draft of an essay, I might spend literally 2 hours on a 2,500 word essay. I mean, a bio typically is 4,000 words. but I read an essay today for the bio project. It takes me 2 hours just to edit it and send it back to the author and say, you got to work on this some more. Here are some suggestions. So one is, it's a time-consuming process. Every essay was read by me, Bill, then it goes to Carl, then it's Lynn, and I'm reading it each time through. That means there are probably in the neighborhood of 10 or 12 iterations of the essay going through that I'm reading. Some people write really well, cogently, concisely, others don't. So it's a process. That's why it's a collaborative process. So, and all of you who have contributed anything to Sabre or anything to any peer-edited journal know that it's a collaborative process, and I really want to thank everyone. And especially the fact-checking, that's minutiae. I mean, literally checking every single word and every single number to be fact-checked. Some authors don't fact-check very well. So I'll say some authors don't even fact-check their essays before they get them to me, and I'm just manually trying to fact-check. Then I send it on to Carl, who comes back yelling and bitching at me with all the errors that are in something I need to fact-check better before it gets to him. So those are our challenges. Other challenges, of course, are you set a deadline that it needs to be, an essay needs to be submitted by arbitrarily right now, April 1st. And, I don't hear from the author, even though I'm trying to keep up with people. So those are things. Essays submitted late. I know Gordon down on the bottom middle, he's jumped in at the last second to write an essay that wasn't submitted, and I don't know where the author is. He doesn't have time, or she doesn't have time, and he jumps in and writes something real quickly. I always have kind of a bullpen of authors who can jump in and write something, be able to spend a lot of time kind of concentrated to be able to write real quickly for me. I think those are the general challenges.
Thank you. Phil, with your writing on the 3 chapters you had, what did you find interesting in your research?
Well, one of the things I found that pretty much everyone in Alabama whose last name is Moore is named Charlie. And so that really represented a little bit of a challenge. And one of the best backs and forth we had was, I had quoted Charlie Moore's father, who was a minor league pitcher, about his advice to his son Charlie not to be a pitcher. And Bill Nowlin, through Gregory, sent back the comment, well, what did Charlie's mother say? And I didn't know who Charlie's mother was. So, that was a little bit of a challenge in terms of just narrowing down some of the research. But the other interesting thing I found was sort of reliving what happened in spring training of 1982 and what happened to Charlie Moore and what happened to Kevin Bass. And it was interesting, I was writing about both of them because what would have happened if Harry Dalton had taken a different view about player development and made the decision that the Brewers had to stick with Kevin Bass in right field to start that season. Kevin Bass went on to be an all-star player with the Astros, would have probably done very well out there, but it would not have had this sort of excitement, this sort of interest hook that developed when they brought Charlie to the outfield. So if you look back at the accounts of 1982, there is just a fascination in the national press about why this wonderful team is playing a catcher in right field and how is this going to work out. So Charlie became the media darling, and hardly anybody outside of this room remembers that Kevin Bass was even with the Brewers.
Rick, same question, and the chapters you did. What if asking real quick? What was the interesting tidbit that you learned? Something that surprised you?
Well, it was just, to me, it was learning more in depth from all the players. The only thing that was difficult about this project, and it's the only bio that I haven't had luck with. I had zero contact with Marshall Edwards. I tried all different avenues. I know and you read the bio, buy the book and read it, the bio. He's a minister. I got mailed to this address, that address. I used all kinds of different avenues, addresses, and zilch from him. And that made it very frustrating. And he made a really great catch in that playoff run.
Yeah.
And I think that, and even with the Bucks book, there were some people who just didn't respond. Greg Smith was fantastic, McLaughlin, Doucette, but I've done a lot more baseball. And this is the only time I was shut out. But, you know, I can't say enough about the Brewers. Like Gregory mentioned about Robin Barnes and the staff of the Brewers. I think part of the reason that we are successful in Milwaukee as researchers is the Brewer staff. They're very supportive. There's all those old media guys there. I mean, Jerry Augustine, I did in the booth with him. And I think learning his genesis, I didn't go into a lot, but learning his genesis to become an announcer was really something. He's a pretty decent announcer. He does a good job. Wish we could hear him now instead of these old 30-year-old games. But the good thing about watching these old games now is we see how accurate the job our writers have done. But to me, that was interesting, the challenge with that. But I'm sure many other contributors have faced that challenge also. And conquering it is a big thing to achieve that. And like Gregory mentioned about the editing and Bill is in editing and stuff, hats off to you. And we try our best, but we're the go-to source. We're the Bible. And I get knocked down for blasphemy, but we're the Bible. When we write for Sabre, that's considered gospel truth. And so we have to be out there contributing that. And the books just keep coming. I'm in the Pro Football Research Association, and we've done 2 or 3 books. And, you know, they use kind of much the same Sabre guidelines, the same format, but the baseball is much more passionate. I think people remember what's going on, what they did. To me, the game I wrote about, that game in Sutton, I was there. And so it was just recalling all that stuff and sharing it with people. Pull up a chair, I'll tell you a regular story. So, I mean, and a lot of us, countless people in Sabre are not just members, but also active as contributors.
Yeah.
I have a question for the whole group. Can I ask that, Dennis?
Sure. I'm glad to have everybody else ask questions, not just me.
I have a question for the whole group, and maybe hear some responses. In part, speaking on my behalf, but also on Sabre's behalf, and that is, you know, these books just can't be about a team and for those people who remember the Brewers, okay? In the end, I think that individual teams really are not that important. It's baseball as the sport that transcends time and space. Those teams help us transcend time and space, but the memories get blurry, and you don't need to be a Milwaukee fan necessarily to enjoy the '82 Brewers. My question might be for the group. Why would Sabre want to even spend the time and energy to write these kinds of books? For whom are the books, do you think? Just for the people who remember the Milwaukee Brewers in 1982? And why would someone who doesn't care at all about the Brewers in '82 want to read this book? This is the kind of feedback that I would like to hear as someone who thinks about the books and Sabre's publishing future. Why spend the money on the Brewers book?
Well, I think that a lot of Sabre members, a lot of people are passionate baseball fans. Anything they can read about baseball, they'll read about. Or we might know somebody like Maxwell, who's in Toronto, we may read about that, or different teams. And we like the history of baseball. And I think the Sabre motto, bringing the history of baseball to life, is the epitome of these books that we're sharing. And we'll get our hands on these books, and now more time than ever now we're reading them. But yeah, we just are thirsty for baseball knowledge. Doesn't have necessarily be our locale, but we're thirsty to know everything we can So maybe we could do good in the trivia contest when Sabre has one.
And I'd say that, you know, as these books now ascend to the bio project and to the games project on the Sabre website, I don't know if everyone has been to the revision of the website and taken a look at that search engine. We're building a wonderful research database. And I think Gregory mentioned that hardly anyone who had been profiled in this book had been in that database before. So we're filling in the gaps. It's like building a cathedral. We're never going to be done. We'll never write a biography of every person who's important to baseball, but we're going to do quite a few. And now that you can search them on the internet, that will draw more and more people to Sabre as they have an interest in the individuals or the teams.
Yeah, and one of the things, Gregory, a project I started that got waylaid with this moving is the monthly Brewer Wisconsin-born ball players. And, you know, maybe 15, 20% of them have bios. A lot of them thanks to Bill because they played for the Red Sox. But it really helps when I'm looking at the player just to go to the bio. And so there's a lot of benefit for me as a well, I'm a huge baseball fan, but it's a researcher and historian. That's a great resource for us. Now, why will the everyday fan want to do that? I'm not sure. You know, I think it's what I like about it. It's about the characters who made up the team, the 82 Brewers or whatever. But when you read the bio, you find out before and after. You learn more about them as people, and I think that's the hook that we have to really work with.
I think one of the aspects that is very valuable regarding the books is the various approaches that have been taken in picking the subject. For example, when you look at all the Sabre publications that have come out in the last few years, some have had to do with the history of ballparks. They're in different eras, going from, you know, throughout eras, broadcasting. I think that breadth of topics is one of the most attractive aspects. When I get a notice or see it, that there's a new Sabre book coming out, until I look at what it is, I really could guess all day as to what that will be. And I think if the book's focused on a particular thing, and one aspect of that would be if it focused on teams and the individuals on them, I think it would not be as attractive. But since it goes through eras, the ballparks, other things that are related to baseball, like the broadcasting book and so forth, I think that's one of the really valuable aspects of it from a history, as Rick said, nailing down the history of the game, but also I think it makes it more attractive because no matter what era a person grew up in, if they're looking at the list of books, they'll find something if they're at all interested in baseball.
Yeah, you know, when we explain to people what Sabre is, a lot of them think it's just an analytics society and stuff. And it's always worthwhile to explain to them, we're also a historical society, and we just like good stories, you know.
Bob, I think that's a really great point. And you know, I talk a lot with others in Sabre about this, and I think Sabre doesn't do a good enough job explaining that, and explaining it to baseball fans, and explaining it to even people outside of baseball. Obviously don't, but I think a lot of baseball fans have no clue what Sabre is and assume it's this analytic approach. I mean, Sabre has all kinds of things that are not always just dealing with Major League Baseball. We're talking about Negro League Baseball. We're talking about baseball and education. We're talking about the business approach. I think that's something that we in Sabre could do a lot better. All of us as members, to really advocate for the breadth of what Sabre is. I think that's a wonderful point, Bob, that needs to be stressed over and over again.
And
One of
the
the,
book,
go ahead, Bill. Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to say, the books that exist are books that somebody came up with the idea for the book, but there are many, many other ideas that we could use. And anybody on this group here, anybody beyond, can come up with an idea and see if it attracts people. As Gregory said before, if it's a project where a good portion of the subject matter has already been covered, we wouldn't want to do it. That's why there will never be a book on the 1927 Yankees, because all the bios have been written. Not all the books are bios, many are games project oriented, and there are so many other areas where we could get into. I know that recently Sabre has set up an editorial board that is going to try to look and step back and take a look at Sabre publications coming forward. And I believe that in the next 4 to 6 weeks, there'll be a call put out to request ideas that people might have. Some of us just keep coming up with ideas. Gregory and myself have been known to come up with any number of ideas. But there are many, many other people out there who will hopefully be encouraged to come up with ideas. Having an idea doesn't mean you have to execute the idea. You could come up with a great idea and then enlist many of us on this panel to try to help bring it forward.
What I was going to say, Greg, is that one of the appealing factors to me with these books is that some of you know that I used to collect baseball yearbooks. I'd buy every team out there, not just the teams that I followed. And in the 80s or even the 90s, you can get them $5 a piece. Now they're very expensive. I mean, between the cost of the book and shipping, and for me, the exchange rate is close to $50 a book. So I stopped buying them. And then you look at these, it's essentially the same thing. It's the same concept, but written from a contemporary perspective rather than at the time. So you're looking at all the biographies of the 82 Brewers and the season highlights. It's like a yearbook, just without the advertising. And just to touch on Bill's point, he was talking about the 27 Yankees. Those of you who have a 77 Yankees yearbook in their collection, there actually is a 27 Yankees bio project in there. I'm sure Marty Appel had something to do with it. But if you look at the yearbook and you look at all the biographies, it's the same concept 30 years before the bio project started.
Yeah, and the other thing that when you talk, Bill, to piggyback off of what you said, is getting people involved in research and writing. And writing a 4,000 word bio out of the chutes is tough. I've written several of them. I know Gregory looked at me when I did the bio on Gorman and thought, holy crap, this guy's got more words here than God. But, there's a lot of editing was needed on my part. But a good place to start is do a games project. It's a smaller project, 1,500 words, and it's a good way to do research and learn. And once you start doing that, you'll do what a Bob Beege does. There's going to be something you see in that game report or something. You say, what is this? And then you start going down those rabbit holes. And I don't know if I'll never be as good as Bob at this, but it is amazing when you start researching how you see something and that prompts you to want to see more. So.
We have a number of young people who have contributed too. There's a couple of teenagers that have written for recent books, and a games project account is such a great way to get started. It's very well defined. It's one game in historical perspective, and that helps young kids build up a resume too. Some of us don't need resumes anymore, but young people do.
Was there any bio that anyone came across, maybe of a role player or someone besides the handful of stars, that you found to be especially compelling if you happen to read any of the bios of the lesser players in this book? Anything that struck you that you learned? I mean, for me, when I look through the players that I find to be for me, that I don't want to say I never heard of these players, but I wouldn't have been able to say much about them. Someone like Dwight Bernard and Jamie Easterly, who happened to be one that I wrote about, or Marshall Edwards. Those were 3 bios right off the bat that I found to be especially compelling and important contributions to Sabre research? Did any of you find a bio that you liked specifically, and maybe why? Why did you like it? What makes a good bio for you?
I think one of the more interesting ones, just going by the very last sentence of the biography, was Rob Piccolo, who the first sentence and the last sentence, they were both what struck out. I mean, the first sentence, he's watching Jim Gantner and Robin Yount doing double plays in batting practice, infield practice, and says, okay, I'm not going to get a lot of playing time.
Yeah.
And then you go to the very end when Rob Piccolo died. And it said the night before he was in downtown San Diego feeding the homeless.
Yeah.
And so there's his contribution.
Mm-hmm.
His contribution may have been marginal on the field, but the fact that he was a ball player, to borrow Jackie Robinson's famous line, improving the lives of others, there's his contribution. There's his epitaph. There's his role in the history of the game.
Good point, Maxwell.
A number of you have written bio projects, and you start to become a fan of the person you're writing to some extent. And when I was writing Gorman's, the toughest thing on his bio was game 7 of the World Series. He struck out to end the game. You just don't want to write that about your subject, but it's part of what it is. It's the facts that has to go there. But there's time or they have a bad game when you write about that, and you almost feel bad because, or you know, and I've done a lot of this with some of these Wisconsin players who may have only had the cup of coffee, and you know, they went 0 for 4, and that was the end of their career. And I feel bad saying that, yet I'd have killed for that 0 for 4. Did you guys have that same experience?
No one did?
No? Oh, okay.
I will say that reading the bios that come in, not just for the books, but the bio project, I mean, one of our constant criticisms is, you know, this sounds like a Homer essay. You know, you're writing about your subject matter like a fan. And I think, if anything, that why this research that Sabre does is so important is because of the objective distance that the authors have in trying to contribute to a very broad as well as in-depth, textured, layered approach to these bios and these individuals. And I just think of what Bill and I often write when we get the essays is, you know, what are all these, you know, you listed all of these accomplishments, or you talk about these in so much of a laudatory way, but you know, where are some challenges that the players had? And I'll say that when we publish the bios eventually from this book on the Bio Project site, you'd be surprised how often we get responses from relatives or other things mentioning, oh, thank you for writing a bio. But we also get complaints from relatives who don't want things in their bio online. And that means perhaps suicide, perhaps marriages or things like that, what might have happened, children out of wedlock, or a number of financial failures, prison sentences even, felonies, that we get contacts from relatives saying that that needs to be removed. And we don't remove it. This isn't a fan site.
Well, you know, my understanding is, and I think some of you guys may know more about this than I do, but when a player goes to the Hall of Fame, not to be inducted, but say, I'm going to take my family to the Hall of Fame, and could I see what the file is about me and my playing career? They will launder that. They will take out the bad stuff before they show it to the player's family.
Interesting. Gregory, to go back to your question about the articles, one of the players, like I said, all I've done is I've been up every night till 2 o'clock in the morning cleaning house and moving boxes. The one player I want to read about is Dwight Bernard. I went to the Brewers fantasy camp in 2005, and it was the 82 Brewers who were coaches. He was the most, between him and Pete Ladd, they were the most human of the group. Dwight Bernard was the only one who was in the bar at night actually buying drinks. We had to buy drinks for all the players. Dwight Bernard actually was buying drinks. And then he had a World Series ring. he said, here, just take a look at it, and passed around the bar and made it back to him. But he was a very down to earth guy. He was one I want to read. And Pete Ladd also. Pete Ladd smiled as much as the campers. He was having so much fun. So.
And as I look at the book and went through the research that I did, especially for Charlie Moore, it brought back the memory of what kind of a person Mike Caldwell was.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, there's a guy. I didn't know all that stuff was going on. And so I haven't gone through the bio that's in the book for Mike Caldwell carefully yet, but he turns out to be a lot more interesting than he was from the stands in 1982. There was a lot going on in that clubhouse that he had a part of.
Yeah.
And I know, Gregory, you mentioned that the Brewers, especially Robin Barnes, were very instrumental in supplying so many photos. That's great. But not only this book, but all the Sabre books, you put a really good design for that cover. There always seems to be very appealing covers that are eye catchers that really are great. So hats off to that, because that's really a good cover design.
Yeah, well, the design is from David Peng. We go through a bunch of different possible designs. We kind of collaborate, but the actual designing is his. But again, the Brewers supplied every single image for this book. That saves thousands and thousands of dollars. So we're thankful for that. The Brewers supplied a lot of the images for the County Stadium book that we did probably 3 or 4 years ago. And about half of you have contributed to the books that I've done over the years, and a lot of you have contributed to other books. But it's nice when teams contribute to a project. They don't always do it. The Astros did it for the Astrodome book that we did, and the Sabre book back in the 2015 Houston event. I know the Red Sox have done a lot. The Pirates have done a lot. But other teams and cities aren't as willing to free up their photo archives or send us a file or a Dropbox with images that we can choose from. It's nice that they when they do that.
And thank you for that.
What I would really like to do in Milwaukee is, of course, we don't know if there is going to be actually a season one, if it will actually come to fruition. And who knows if if fans will be at games. I heard that even today, Crane Kenny in Chicago said he fully anticipates having Wrigley Field up to 20% filled at some point during the season. But beside that, what I would really like to do this year and this summer, and we'll need hopefully we can collaborate on this together. I would like to have some events in Milwaukee this summer. And we can brainstorm where we can do this. Is there a bookstore that we can contact that we can have an event? Could we have a Sabre event on Blue Mountain Road, Rick, up there at the bar, and have a Sabre event where we have books that we bring in and maybe sell some books and have maybe a book signing or a discussion. Other kinds of ways to promote Sabre and promote this book specifically. I think that's a really important a project that we as a group might want to consider.
Well, Dennis would work and then look it over. I think the main thing is how this pandemic plays out.
Yeah.
One thing I've done already, and I thank Bill so much for those copies of the book. I've already mailed a book to Jeff Levering, the Brewers announcer, and he was very, oh boy, this is fantastic, and this has something to do. I'm also getting a book to Jim Paschke.
Okay.
He lives right near me. I didn't realize that he's only a couple blocks away. He got a copy of the Bucks book. I'm going to get a copy when he's come in of the Brewers book. Also, John Barnes, who was Robin Barnes's husband, he wants a book. I got his address, so I'm going to take care of this. But yeah, right now, we're lucky this book went to press as it did. We beat the pandemic, luckily, and all your hard work and everything, editors and stuff. But you know, we were at the Brewers game now, like Bob and myself. We'd be distributing this book to the press people. I also got a book to Tom Hodrecourt too, the Journal Sabre writer. So I've been sending some stuff out. But I absolutely agree with you that having an event on Blue Mountain Road or some kind of space would be, or a library or whatever, having an event in the public where we could have a PowerPoint put together and have the book available for sale and talk about Sabre. Yeah, we just have to see how this plays out.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll run right off that bench when the word's given for us to play ball and do a presentation or a meeting.
One of the things, Gregory, I want to start next week. I'm going to start reaching out to some of the local media. I'm going to get a copy of the book to Rock, to Bill Schroeder. I'm going to reach out.
Good. Let me know who you go to. That way I won't duplicate it.
Yeah, I'll take care of Bill. I got to get hold of him with something anyhow. But reach out to media. I know that I've got someone from Sabre, can't think of his name, reach out to me, but Channel 6 here in Milwaukee trying to do something on the book.
I know Tim Van Vuren one too.
Yeah.
From Channel 6.
Okay. But I'm going to reach out to some of the radio, the talk shows, even, some of the morning shows on regular radio, just see if we can get on there and talk about the book and talk about Sabre and do as Bob said, let the people know that we're more than just a bunch of, sabermetricians. Sabermetricians and sabermetrics is very important, but it's not all we're about. So, yeah.
Chuck Freeman would be one who has that show in the morning too. I didn't get to him yet, but Chuck Freeman.
Yeah, I've been remiss. I have not sent anything. I belong to a group on Facebook called Old Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Run by a guy by the name of Adam Levine. I don't know if any of you have ever met him or gone to his shop. He apparently has a shop on Milwaukee Avenue downtown. But his website has more than 50,000 members. And I posted things on there that have gotten like 12,000 likes. So I'll go ahead and post information about the book to his site as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Great idea. I didn't think about them. I see stuff on there all the time.
We posted it in our Braves Historical Association Facebook page also about the book.
Yeah, I think I posted it there.
Yeah, and there's another organization called the Chudnow Museum. Does anybody recognize that?
Yeah, I heard of that, yeah.
It seems a little bit counterculture, but it might be worth checking off the box there just to see what that is.
Mary, you know about them. The Mary Shea's doing something there in July, right?
Well, if I'm unmuted, yeah. I went to see the exhibit. So they have a connection with, it's Paul Tenpenny and Chance Michaels. They have a website called BorchardField.com. They're just big fans of Borchard Field. And they have a bunch of memorabilia. So they have a nice display at the Chudnow. I went to see it without touching too much. And the museum is open. They're going to have, so they have a Founders Day every July, but they've had to postpone it because of COVID. And I think it's going to be a virtual event that's going to be August 16th. I believe that's the date that they're going to stick with. So Patrick Steele, who wrote Home of the Braves, is going to be a presenter, and that's going to be virtual. I'm going to be doing my women's baseball shtick. So Dennis Peugeot was very kind to recommend me. So I don't know if they'll have anybody else. So it sounds like a fun event. Not as much fun as if you're there, but if anybody's been at the museum, it's really worth seeing. It's like in a house, an old house at Marquette, and it's just a bunch of antiques and ephemera from this little old man Chudnow, and but it's really beautifully done. It's really worth the trip. So, but I'll post in the newsletter. I think I've told Dennis. I'll send the flyer so that we can post it in the newsletter and on Facebook, whatever. So August 16th.
Yeah, I think I had something in the last newsletter, a flyer, but the dates are changing. So good. Yeah.
Yeah, they just changed it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis, for that meeting you were talking about, what about that park where you had that party the first night of the Sabre convention where Gorman Thomas was signing copies of Down in the Valley? There's nothing but space there. You could set up a table to sell books. I can't remember the name of the park, but I can picture it perfectly. It was right by the river.
Bob, do you remember? And that's when we did the dedication for the plaque. Was that
Yes.
when we?
And there was some guy playing baseball music.
Yeah, I believe that was Chuck Brodsky. Is that the name?
Yes.
And the park was right near the Milwaukee Historical Society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Pier Marquette Park. Yeah. We were outside for that. There was nothing inside.
Yeah, that's right.
Brodsky was in a little, whatever it's called.
Juno Park, though.
He did about, I don't know, almost an hour of baseball songs. And Gorman signed autographs, but that was outdoors, just at the north end of the County Historical Society. We had cake there.
Yeah.
Free cake. What else do we have? I don't know.
I don't remember. It was nice. It was a real nice afternoon. The pleasant weather was real good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we're talking about, for those aren't sure, 2001, the Sabre convention was in Milwaukee, and Bob Beege's research proved that the American League was founded in Milwaukee at the old Republican House Hotel, and we dedicated a plaque on the Journal Sentinel Park. It's a parking lot, I think, right, Bob? I think we dedicated
part of the property.
Yeah, so we dedicated a plaque, and it was on the fence, I think, to the parking lot for that.
Well, the Brewers will probably prevent tailgating at Miller Park, even with the fans not being able to go in. But the way I walked to County Stadium, I often went through Wood, Wisconsin, and remember before it got blocked off, you could see the games from the bluff. And I know that the Wood is rebuilding some of the old Soldiers' Home buildings. So there might be an opportunity there. A Scattered Forces, the Rebellion tailgate party during a game you can't get into sounds good to me. But
Gregory, you're right. I think promoting the book and promoting Sabre is a great opportunity for us right now. We have with the book, it's a way to try and do that and capture membership and what we're all about. Any other questions on the book, anybody?
Hey, do we try anything with the Milkmen? I know they weren't friendly with us last year, but I see they start their season on, the 7th of July.
I don't, not so much they're unfriendly, they're just really unorganized. Follow through with them was terrible, we can do that. I'm one of those that going out and about, I live in a county where I may be the only person wearing a mask when I go out. So I'm just really nervous about even leaving my house with all this going on. So I'm not sure how many people are going to do that, but.
Is that Lake Park? Is that the name of the park? Well, Lake Park, I think, maybe.
That's down along the lake. We could, that would be. We've got a lot of parks here, but to do that.
The main thing is this virus now, boy. Let's hope everything plays out good in the end.
Yeah. Bill Nolan, you've written over 700 bios. What drives you to write these bios?
Mostly the pay.
Oh.
I did. I just passed 700 a couple weeks ago, I guess. I don't know. I just really got into it. The whole thing started in 2005 with the book on the 75 Red Sox. That was the idea of a local chapter member in Boston. And I just got hooked. I enjoy writing bios. They're a lot more work than writing games, of course, but I just enjoy writing the bios more. For a long time, I preferred writing about deceased players because they were first of all, easier to research some of the family background because you could go back to, 1940 census is the last one we have available now. But also, you didn't have to worry about interviewing them because you couldn't. But it's mostly been Red Sox that I've done. Although, weird things happen. I was I was not at the Sabre convention for the first time in the 21st century last summer because I was in London. And I met a couple people from the music business there. I went to see the Red Sox play the Yankees. That's why I was in London. I met a guy from the music business there that I knew, and he told me about a banjo player that he'd come across from the 1920s. And he said he thinks his brother had played some baseball. I looked him up. Okay, it hasn't been written. Just decided to write his bio and send it back to my friends in London. Then some of the concept ideas. We've got a book in the works of players that had one hit and only one hit in the major leagues. There've been a couple books like that, but this will be another. And I just, enjoy writing these people. I'm mostly working on the 1970s and 1980s now, Red Sox, because I've filled in the gaps of players. We now have a Red Sox bio for everyone from 1901 to 1976, every single Red Sox player. And so I'm trying, because we have the 1986 Red Sox book that Leslie Heafy and I did in tandem with the 1986 books back in 2016. I'm trying to catch up from 76 through 86. And we've got people working on everybody but Rich Gale. So anybody out there wants to write up Rich Gale, let me know.
Maybe there's even a Kansas City Royal fan who could do
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, some of these guys work for more than one team. But the last guy I have completed is Roger Lafrancois, and he's just got a great story. I mean, he's the last player to play an entire season for a team and bat 400. And it's not Ted Williams, it's Roger Lafrancois. Now he was with the team every day, all season long. He only got 10 at bats, but in those 10 at bats, he got 4 base hits, including 2 on the final day, which of course elevated him to unbelievable fame.
Speaking of Boston baseball, who are the last 2 remaining Milwaukee, Boston Braves? Still living.
That are alive?
Who are the last 2 living former Boston?
One of them's Burt Field.
Do you know?
Yep.
The other is Del Crandall.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, Crandall just turned 90.
Yeah.
If I could make a general call, I encourage all of you to take a look. I believe, Phil, you mentioned already the new website, or maybe Dennis, you mentioned the new Sabre website. It is fantastic, and it's only going to get better. It's only going to have more integrated information on it, with curated exhibitions online. It's going to be even better. But I encourage all of you to really consider writing something for the bio project, of the game project, the games project. A good number of you I know have written already. You can send me an email if you have any questions, if you haven't done it before. But for me, it's incredibly rewarding writing these bios of players, whether they're a superstar or, like Bill said, a one-hit wonder.
Is our chapter has not had a bunch of people writing. We've got a group that does, but there's a lot of members who haven't. Would there be interest in having for lack of a better definition, a session on how to write a bio? I know at the convention we've had some of those sort of things. Would there be?
I would be happy to do something like that. Rory, my partner, my co-director in the bio project, we've talked about that before. I'd be happy to take a look and see what we could do if we want to really think about what constitutes a bio for the bio project. And I think one challenge is, we'll talk to somebody, they've written a book on player X, Y, and Z, and they simply want to take a 200-page book that they published and somehow condense that into a 4,000 or 5,000 word bio by simply just randomly taking pages or paragraphs and creating a bio. It doesn't work like that. There's a flow, there's an expectation, and there's a lot of editing back and forth. What we want, what we need in a bio, there's a certain format and program for the bio project as well as the games project. We'd be happy to host something like that.
Well, and
How to write a bio project or a games project. It could be something together.
And the other benefit of this new format is that's something that could be videoed, so you could do it for the Milwaukee chapter, say, but it could be the video that could be shared all over Sabre. And that way we could all learn from it. So it could be the basis for other meetings.
You have it archived and like you said, available for the entire organization.
Yeah.
Well, if you all are interested in this book, I hope all of you are regularly looking at the bio project to see what the newest bios are. On the bio project homepage, or the landing page of the bio project, on the new one, on the right-hand side, you'll see vertically listed all of the newest bios. So those are populated as soon as we're able to publish a new bio. So it's always there. I hope you're able to take a look at those. It's fascinating. For me, that's really what baseball history is. Not just, what did Honus Wagner do or what did Babe Ruth do, but some of these lesser players whose stories will never be told unless Sabre tells that story.
Gregory, I got involved with a member from Sabre member in Mississippi. Looking at the May birthdays, and Bert Thiel's birthday was on May 4th. I was just looking to see if there's any research out there, anything written on him. There were 2 articles written in April on a guy 94 years old. That's where the trivia question comes from. That was in the Boston Globe. And Tom Van Heining writes an English publication for Baseball 101. They want English in there. And he had like half a bio written already. And I reached out to him and said, why don't you finish this and make it a bio project? He said, well, do you want to help me on this? I don't want to do it alone. So we teamed up and we spent 2 weeks putting together a bio. It was working with him, collaborating was fun, but it was just interesting learning Bert. And I had the pleasure of talking to him. It's the first time I had a long conversation. I was hoping for 10 minutes because he's 94 years old and I figured he'd fall asleep. And I finally had to say, Bert, I have to run. I got to get going after 90 minutes. He'd call back tomorrow, and he was fascinating. So getting involved in doing this research is really a lot of fun. I have not done any in 3 weeks and it's driving me crazy. I'm figuring Monday I got to do something.
It can be really great when you connect with a player that's enthusiastic. There's a guy named Herb Cruz who played, and I interviewed him, I don't know, it might be 10 years ago now. And he was in a nursing home someplace like in Wyoming or South Dakota. And I could tell that nobody at the nursing home believed he'd been a major league ball player. And so to actually have somebody talking to him about his career, I couldn't get him off the phone either. And then he called me back the next day and he wanted to talk some more. It was just so much fun because I knew I made his day and the day after too. And then to have a bio come out later, it's really, it can be really enjoyable.
So Bill, I have to say something like that. I called a player to interview him about a different player. And this player was around 90 or 95 years old. He was also in a nursing home. And I just had a few questions for him. I was on the phone for him for probably 90 minutes. And he, I think, was under the impression that I was roughly his age. And so he's saying, and he played for the Yankees, and he says, do you remember this one dance hall on 6th Avenue and, going over there? And I said, no, I don't remember that. He says, after a while, maybe about an hour, hour and a half into the conversation, he says, wait a second, how old are you anyway? Are you 95 years old?
How do you know all this stuff that happened in the 1940s?
Al Brown, Skinny Brown, who played for the Orioles and Red Sox, he's of course settled here in Greensboro. He's really a native of Greensboro, North Carolina, where I live. We became very close friends, and he told me one time that I knew more about his career than he did. Because I studied. He said he was just busy pitching.
Is there anybody on here that has thought about writing but has a concern about how to get started? I think sometimes, how do I get started is the biggest question. Bob, I saw your hand.
How do you get started?
Yeah, sure. I wrote an article that was in the National Pastime. I think it was years and years ago. It was one time, took me a year to write it, and it had to get rewritten a couple times about the probability of throwing a no-hitter. I would love to do more, but I just don't even know where to start. I don't know that my writing style matches anyone else's. It's a business writing style, right? I've been in business for 30 years now, working at a bank, and it's a little dry. I read a book like this, and it's fascinating to read guys who are at the end of their career, guys who had a cup of coffee. These are great stories. I love reading. There was one about the A's a few years ago. I still read that once in a while. These are great. I just don't know if I could do it.
Yeah, I really think the bios, it's all about capturing your narrative. We're all storytellers. How do we tell a story that obviously appeals to as many people as possible, and trying to be able to find that voice, if a player's alive, giving him that voice in writing. I think maybe it's a good idea if we try to work on maybe a localized, maybe a combined chapter meeting about getting started in writing a project. I teach quite a few sports history courses, and some of my students have been involved in writing bios as well as games projects, and it's about how to, what makes the story, how does it flow, and what's the format. Not that there's one specific format for Sabre, but there are expectations of what needs to be in the bio.
Gregory, why don't we talk about this offline and put some ideas together?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Bob, you should write up a game. Just pick some game that meant something to you. Or, I mean, the first game I wrote up happened to be the first game I took my son to. He was 6 weeks old. He doesn't remember it very well, but and it was nothing that was special to the game. But I just decided to write it up to memorialize it, and you'll have people that'll help you. The various editors will help you.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
If the game wasn't memorable, Bill, how come you remember it so well?
I looked it up.
That's how I found out about Retro Sheet. I heard about a guy who could help me find a game. Dave found the first game that I went to as a kid. I only knew that Glenn Borgman hit one of his few career home runs in the bottom of the ninth to tie it, and that Larry Heisel homered in the 10th to beat the Royals. And with those two bits of information in the early 90s, Dave Smith found it. So I started working the Retro Sheet for 20 years after that.
Yeah.
Just because he sent me the Royals score sheet and the Twins score sheet from my very first ball game. I didn't remember what year it was for sure, but he did. He found it very quickly.
Well, I think that's a good point that you make, Bob, because I know one of the biggest things that we come across in any of the editorial work, either online or for the books, might be that a lot of the contributors do not know what the resources are that Sabre offers. I mean, free resources, access to newspaper archives, access to this. And then obviously if you're writing, there's, writers need to invest in certain things. That means they need to have access to newspapers and things like that. You just can't say, well, I don't have any access to this, so I'm going to write without, you need access to newspapers. But we have a lot of resources already free online through Sabre that you have access to.
Yeah.
Any other questions, everybody? We're past the hour, although we could talk baseball forever. We had a book club meeting, and the book club meeting was really good. We had a nice chat about the book, and at the end of the meeting, we went off topic, and it was like 20 minutes sitting at the bar just talking baseball. And that was kind of like the highlight of the evening, because I just have not had a chance to just sit around and do that. So if anybody has anything else you'd like to talk about, let me throw the question out. Who was it? Maybe Gregory, did you say, are we going to have a season? Okay, we now know they want to play starting the 23rd, 24th. How many of you really believe we're going to have that season, or we're not going to have something happen that's going to stop it? And I don't think the players and the owners are going to be the problem now. It's probably more COVID or municipalities or things like that. How many people think we're going to have that season or not have the season?
No, we we aren't because we're not going to have fans, so that's a warning sign to say we're probably not going to have a season.
Okay.
I
Right.
think
And
we'll have the start of a season. I just don't know. I don't think we'll have a postseason. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, they're going to have all the teams play in Florida and Arizona. Now those are the last two states you'd want to go to.
Speaking from Arizona,
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Stay safe.
Yes, the difficulty. I mean, the thing that I fear most is just how painful pulling back from this is going to be. It's going to be hard to play under the strictures that they've proposed, but taking this apart is going to be just heartbreaking. And that probably has to be done with even more care than what they've done so far. And I'm not sure that the process to this point has been all that clear. So I fear for it. I really do.
Phil, I think what we have to try to get people to follow is not who wins the playoffs, but to enjoy baseball as an art, to just enjoy the choreography of it, the skill of a game. And the more we can just stress that aspect of it, if the season gets truncated, we'll have enjoyed seeing a number of games.
Yeah, I sort of find it, the similar, about starting up with the universities in the fall. And the argument is that, well, taking classes is one thing, but the entire university experience is really valuable and really distinctive. So we can watch the games on TV, but what we all want to do is go have a beer and sit in the stands and with our friends. And that's the emotional part of it that gets connected with baseball, as it always has, and rightfully so. And that's what we're really going to miss this year.
The thing that, and along that same line, is my son and son-in-law during games, the text back and forth. Do you believe he did that? It's that the argument about the games afterwards, or talking about them. Yeah, I think I missed that almost more than the games.
I never thought I would be jealous of stuffed animals that get to sit in the Korean stands to watch the KBO.
Yeah.
They're seeing baseball and we're not, so you're right, Ryan.
Yes.
Hey, I'm curious, what are other people's opinions on this, what I call Bud Selig regionalization of baseball, where, you're just going to play the Cubs, the Sox, the Brewers, the Tigers, the Indians, and Mike Trout never comes to town. You won't see the Yankees or the Red Sox. I have a feeling this is going to be a permanent thing if, so-called this is successful this year.
Yeah, I share that feeling, the thing about the extra innings and the runner starting on second base. And, they snuck in the contraction of minor league baseball while this was going on. And we were up in arms about that. And then all of a sudden, well, so that's it, those towns are losing their teams. And the DH all over the place now, we would have been all upset about that. And now, okay, we're going to have a DH. Are they really going to go back now and start doing this stuff again? I don't know.
I kind of like the idea, Mike, not necessarily the regionalization. Let's experiment and try some things. It's a short season. How do we capture a different fan? And will some of those, people have talked about doing it, and we'll see the pros and cons of, and some of these things, they're going to say, well, this is crazy. Why did we ever come up with it? But it's an opportunity to, maybe have some fun and bring some new fans into the game.
Dennis, you make a good point about changing demographics and working on maybe some kind of experimentation. I'll give you maybe a snippet of an anecdote of why trying to find younger fans. I am the academic advisor to our baseball team. It's a Division III school, and the last few years we've played up in the World Series that happens to take place up in Wisconsin, I believe, in Appleton. Mm-hmm. So we have around 45 baseball players on the team, maybe 50. I'll first say they're all white, which kind of reflects how Major League Baseball is. I will say that there might be 2 players on the team who follow Major League Baseball. They're all on their travel team. They all love baseball, but they don't watch baseball. They don't care about the major leagues. They don't know anything about history, but they're the biggest super baseball baseball fanatics, but just about their baseball and competing the entire year. But as far as baseball, they don't care. Maybe going to Wrigleyville, every once in a while, or down to Sox Park to see a game. Other than that, they're not at all interested in baseball.
Mhm. I was
That's an idea.
Yeah, I was host family for the Madison Mallards for 5 of the first 6 years. And so we hosted 9 players, and I gave every one of them a copy of Glory of Their Times for the baseball history, and to show that the game that they're playing is almost the same as was played, 100 years ago. And one of the kids took a look at it, threw in the backseat of his car and said, "I'll never read this crap." So yeah, it is a lot like that.
Did anyone read the book, Dennis? Did anyone call up and read the book and give you feedback?
None gave me feedback. I believe one of them did. He was the only one I saw the entire time, the 5 seasons we were host family. I actually saw read a book. I never saw any others read a book, so I figured he probably would.
I was just wondering, because that's a good way to get involved in stories. The baseball has the richest history of all of it. I mean, all of sports. So I was wondering if that would grab somebody.
That's a good question. I should follow up with him and see if he ever read that, because we still communicate at Christmas. That's a great.
It's great. It's just, especially because I saw the Untitled Chapter. Get some funding for Sabre National for youth memberships. The chapters could apply for youth members. So you could say, "Hey, if you're interested, here's a membership."
Well,
kids love free stuff,
With all the push to the young people, I was watching Game 7 of the 71 World Series, the Pirates and the Orioles the other day on MLB, and that was a very quick Game 7. And Kurt Gowdy made the point that it was an hour 5 for the first 5 innings, and he referred to how many people back then, which I didn't realize, that baseball was slow. So I kind of laughed that darn near 50 years later, they're still trying to quote unquote speed up the game. And Game 7 was leading into the Bronco Charger game or the Pittsburgh Cleveland game in the NFL that Sunday afternoon.
I just want to kind of echo what Gregory was saying. I'm a 8th grade social studies teacher and a high school baseball coach. And I have probably 150 kids that I work with daily, and I could probably count them on one hand, anybody that knows anything about baseball history whatsoever. We do have some Brewer fans and people that follow the game and stuff like that, but as far as baseball history, it's zero, and it's kind of sad. So I kind of make it my personal crusade to kind of educate a little bit here and there on Jackie Robinson Day and things like that. We'll go into the Negro Leagues and things like that. But yeah, I think the baseball, I was kind of an anti-DH guy for years, but, these younger kids, they don't want to see a pitcher hit, to be honest. They want to see more offense in the game. And whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, but I think it's going to be more appealing to younger people.
305, 305.35. It was the average time of the game up to this past season. The younger people probably don't want to do that, do they, John?
The attention span is just not there, So, in high school, when we go to tournaments, they'll do that runner on second base and extra innings thing. We'll actually do it. And actually, it sounds kind of sacrilege, but it actually is kind of fun. It's pretty exciting because there's a lot of strategy that goes into it too, as far as, do you want to bunt him over right away and then look for a sacrifice fly, or there is a lot of strategy that goes into it. So I'm going to be open-minded about it, I guess.
Who do you get to put on second base? I'm curious. I've heard that. I'm in an older person softball league, and we have unlimited pinch runners, but your pinch runner always has to be the last person who made the most recent out before the guy who got on base.
That's what I understand they're going to go
Okay.
with. And if you have a guy left on the bench, you
Or
can
you could
use
put in a
him.
pinch runner at that time,
Yeah,
but then there's
yeah.
regular substitution. Okay.
That's what
Very
I
interesting.
understand.
Yeah, so that last guy who made the last out in the last inning
Mhm.
or the last batter becomes your pinch runner on second. Very cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't feel right, but it might be
No.
interesting to watch.
I agree.
I mean, how do you account for that? I was in retro sheet for years helping. I did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games. How do you account for a runner starting on second base?
I actually saw something today that there's going to be an unearned run. It'll be ruled as an
Really?
error. It'll be ruled as an error or something like that. I don't know on who, but it'll be an unearned run.
For the database to be complete, the runner has to get to second base. Somehow Dave Smith has to figure out how in his old DOS program to get a runner from the dugout to second base with no plate appearance.
Sure, sure.
We just hit 9 o'clock, and I saw Gregory said he had to leave. Phil had to leave. It looks like Rick's leaving. So if people, before everybody jumps off, we can continue talking if you like. Thank you for attending, everybody. It's always, these are always interesting and good opportunities. So thanks for attending.
These are great. Thanks.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Dennis.
Thanks,
you
guys.
so much.
Thanks, guys.
In case anybody was wondering, Memo Luna is 90 today. Memo
Bob, you
Luna.
always get them in.
There's a subject for you for the Bio Project. He pitched 2/3 of an inning, 1954.
Memo Luna?
Memo Luna.
Well, it must be a full moon.
Somebody left a note telling him about the moon. I don't know. Anyway, that's his name, Memo Luna. All right. Good night,
Hey,
everybody.
getting back to the young people, I've heard a bunch of different ball players talk about how MLB should kind of do like a 24-hour type video showing how MLBers live. I've heard from Delino DeShields, Jesse Barfield's kid, a couple other ball players, where they're like the other sports promote the lifestyle of an MLB player that, or they don't, and the NFL, the NBA, that's what it's all about. Hey, I don't care about playing. I just want to be an NBA guy and have the fancy suits and the fancy clothes. And really, we just see the ball players on the field. So for me, I'm not that interested, but if a 12-year-old kid is, then I guess that's maybe the way MLB should be promoting our sport. So just food for thought that I've heard.
Well, one thing I think pretty obviously, though, once it comes in, it probably will never go away. That's the history of these things, I think.
Yeah, there's the subject of the next statistic, the next Sabre book, 10 best dressed players of this year. If you've ever walked through the players' parking lot there, you check out the cars that are parked there.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, I was out of sequence there because what I was really talking about were these rules, like putting a guy on second base.
Yeah.
If it's ever adopted,
Well,
even temporarily, I don't think it'll ever be.
Wasn't the designated hitter an experiment too for a year or two?
Yeah.
And it never went away in the American League.
Yeah,
Not good or
yeah.
bad, right? It is what it
Yeah.
is. But it was supposed to be an experiment, like yellow baseballs and
Yeah.
night baseball is an experiment too. So here we are. Some are good, some are bad.
What thoughts on miking players during the games like they've done in spring training games?
I thought it was really fun. I thought it was excellent. I think that's a good way to, I think Major League Baseball is way behind the NBA and the NFL for marketing players.
Exactly.
And promoting them. And I think that's a way to kind of get a little bit of an inside look at a guy's personality and stuff. I'm all for that.
That's where they're going, trying to promote that. And you talk about the cars in the parking lot. Hey, let's see because what do we really know about Christian Yelich? Not much other than his great play on the field.
Right.
I think it may be a bit distracting, but if they do it in a way that adds to the game, I think that could be something that could really benefit baseball.
I think the NFL does a nice job. They have editorial control, right? They'll mic up a guy for several people for an entire game. You won't hear it during the game. I saw it during the XFL. It was very distracting when you hear the coaches and the play. But if you see a 5-minute clip afterwards of players and you edit it down to those nuggets that they have, it's really a marketing opportunity. Right? But you don't want to listen to Christian Yelich in the outfield all game. But
No.
the XFL was distracting. The coaches yelling, the players, you could hear everything they said. It made no sense to most of us.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, Bobby. We don't want to become the XFL because if we do, we might not have a future.
But over the course of a 3-hour game, if you mic up 3 or 4 players and one of the managers or a coach, you can get a good 10 minutes out of that at the end of the game that is incredibly compelling and interesting at key points in the game. Someone's got to do the work, but there are also people who do that for a living every day. So why not, right? It's a great opportunity. And I think the NFL does that really well. They mic up Brett Favre back in the day for hours, and you get 3 nuggets, and he's famous for them.
I mean,
that's all it takes.
That actually makes me think of Carlton Fisk's home run, because it was a rat got on the camera operator, and so the camera operator stayed on Fisk. So it's like,
right.
Because of a rat, we revolutionized television sports. I mean,
Well, just to mic up people at first base and maybe play it a pitch or two later. Hey, what were they just saying?
Yeah. You got a little delay, a little control. You control what comes out, and only the good stuff comes out. Yeah, even during the game. And I think they have done that. And occasionally you'll hear the guys talking at first base. They know each other all now, right? So especially during spring training, they'll talk and they'll shake hands and talk about what's going on after the game. And they're people, right? Yeah, even during the game, it just live is a little distracting. Plus, you never know what's going to come out of somebody's mouth too. So you always got to be careful. You got to have that. You got to have a little delay.
I noticed more teams forming their own networks, like the Cubs and the Dodgers and the Yankees. They have like their own creative control. They have more control over content. That definitely includes the stuff that's going on the field. They're able to access.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity that maybe they're missing, right? They have ultimate control over all that content. And like was it NEW? Is that the network out in New England that has the Red Sox or NES? NES.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, they have a great opportunity. And you're right. I think you're right on something, John. We're losing a younger generation who know a lot about baseball, the game, up to their level, but they don't know anything about it. Maybe they don't have to know about the history of baseball. You should know about Major League Baseball and what's going on around you at levels above you. I don't know if you have to know the history the way we do and the way we have a passion for it, but I played high school baseball in the early 80s. It was a long time ago. But we knew a lot about Major League players at the time and a little bit of the history, not like you can today with the internet, but we were very interested in that. That was really, we all thought we were going to play in the major leagues, and none of us did.
Well, Bob, one of the things that I think about too is that, when we were kids in the 80s, there was no travel ball. You played in your town,
Right.
And these kids that I work with at the high school level, the really good players, first of all, up until last year, they didn't even play with the high school team in Greendale because we played summer ball in Wisconsin. And so the summer season is when their travel ball season is, where you get noticed by scouts and you go to these fancy tournaments and things like that. And so the really, really, really elite players didn't even play with the high school team.
We didn't have that. We had Legion baseball in the summer. That's where we played when you played with high school. Then you played Legion in the summer, and that was it.
And they play like a 60 or 70 game schedule with tournaments and stuff everywhere. And so when you're doing that, you don't have time to go to major league games or to watch baseball on TV. And I think that
becomes your life. Yeah, maybe that's a different problem, right?
Yeah. So.
Well, look at Keltner. He never played high school baseball, I don't believe.
Yep. No, he did not. He went to Waukesha West, but he never played at all with Waukesha West.
Jared Keltner, who's now, he got drafted by the Mets. Now he's with the Mariners.
Oh, wow.
Prospect, yeah.
That's awesome.
What did everybody think of the draft coverage, speaking of the draft?
Nice distraction.
It was.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the undrafted kid.
We had a chapter meeting the first night of the draft, so everybody, where people are dropping off. Final words, anybody? I think we can end this. Thank you, Francis, again for joining. Bob,
this is great. Thanks.
Bob, sorry I missed your meeting. I had a granddaughter's birthday party at the same time, so.
Enjoyed it a whole lot.
July 22nd, minor league baseball Zoom meeting.
Yeah, send the email out.
It's out there, yeah.
Already signed up.
I'm going to get back to you on a coaching, Stro, I'm going to get back to you on a coaching meeting also.
Okay, sounds great. All
Take
right,
care,
take care,
guys.
guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Have a great
Yes.
Great
See you.
meeting, guys.
Well,